Hello, I'm Doug Rubio. I'm professor of classical guitar at the State University of New York at Potsdam. One way to maximize your musical improvement is to get organized with your practice time. My favorite practice strategy for preparing a recital program involves making a list of playing goals. I begin by going through a process of what I think of as practice triage. Hospital emergency rooms assess the severity of each illness and injury that a patient brings in, and then assigns that patient an appropriate place in the line. Likewise, I identify and assess each practice goal, and then I put it on one of three lists, depending upon how much immediate attention it needs. List number one is all about skill development. On this list are difficult passages that need daily practice. Most are technical problems, moves in pieces that I can't do reliably yet. Examples might be a tricky left-hand shift, an awkward right-hand string crossing, or an unidiomatic chord shape. Each item needs to be short, and I'm talking about a few beats maximum. If the passage is longer than a few beats, odds are that there are several hard moves in it that would be better off being practiced separately. Because the items are short, I only need to practice each one for a very brief period of time, 2 or 3 minutes at most. I use a timer on my watch or phone to time myself. These short periods of time make it easier to stay very focused. I work my way down the items on this list, and when I get to the end, I start back at the beginning and work through the list a second time. Studies have conclusively shown that small amounts of practice done in several intervals is a better way of learning a skill than doing a single longer session. So I go through list number one at least twice and maybe a third time every day. Whatever practice time I have left in the day can be divided between lists 2 and 3. Now, an item on list 1 won't stay on that list forever. If I'm practicing effectively, it can eventually be graduated to list number 2. List number 2 is about skill maintenance. This list includes hard spots that I have mastered, but which still need fairly regular, but maybe not daily attention to keep them under my fingers. Like with list number 1, these passages are short and specific, and I practice each one for only a few minutes each. But this one, I only go through 1 time a day instead of 2 or 3. Since this is about maintaining skills rather than developing them, going through it multiple times is not as necessary. If I don't get to every item on list number 2 every day, that's okay. I keep track of the items I've practiced, and the next day I start from where I left off. Over the course of a week, I will have practiced each item on 3 or 4 different days. And as before, some items eventually graduate off of this list. But music is more than just a series of individual bite-sized morsels. So that brings me to list number 3, longer passages. These might be a few phrases long, or perhaps an entire section of a piece. And eventually, I will include entire works or movements. Because the items on this list are longer, I give each one considerably more practice time than the items on the first 2 lists. I practice each longer passage 2 or 3 days in a row before I move it to the bottom of the list. It may then be a few more days before I get to it again. And those are my 3 lists. The proportion of time that I spend on each list will vary over time. When I begin preparing a recital program, list number 1 is often quite long and requires a lot of practice time. But as I graduate items to list number 2, list number 1 doesn't take as much of my time. And when I'm just a few weeks out from my recital date, I certainly hope that list number 1 is close to being empty and that list number 2 will have only a moderate number of items on it. That way I can devote most of my time to the longer passages of list 3. So thank you for watching and good luck with your practicing.